the last thing that I wanted to talk about before we get into sleep and then some real protocols for our recovery is the idea of active versus passive recovery. Now, in all of the studies that I've kind of shown you at this point, passive recovery really is the control. Like I said, in all of these different recovery modalities, what we're trying to find out is, do we get a benefit in addition to just good nutrition and good rest? And so passive recovery really is the baseline. However, I'm sure a lot of you have heard a lot about active recovery. And active recovery is great. It improves blood flow. It gets the heart beating a little bit. You're using the muscles, and that really is going to help with blood flow, nutrient delivery to the muscles and tissues, and then the delivery of waste products away from the muscle and tissues that have been used during exercise and during training. However, there are just some stipulations. I will say the research shows that active recovery is beneficial with a few caveats. Now, one example of a study I looked at is one that was done, I believe, out of the United Kingdom. They were looking at hockey players, and they wanted to see whether active or passive recovery was better for their recovery post-training. Now, hockey, it's kind of a contact sport, right? And so there is the risk of actual injuries and actual muscle damage and bruising and things like that. And so, on the one hand, it might be more beneficial for these athletes to do things like cold water immersion and take NSAIDs. However, all the same principles are going to apply with recovery. Is active recovery or passive recovery going to be better for these hockey players to perform better? Now, what they found is they kind of tested a variety of ranges on what level of active recovery is going to be best. And what they found was that 28% of the VO2 max was the best spot for active recovery. Now, a lot of us have never had our VO2 max tested and wouldn't really know how to perform at 28% of our VO2 max, even if we did know what our VO2 max was. That is an obvious stipulation. That's really a measure and a number that you can only obtain as well as actually put into practice at some sort of an exercise physiology lab to hit that exact 28% of your VO2 max. But really, 28% of your VO2 max is going to be just not super active, right? You're going to be not, resting. Really what it looks like for most people is probably just like a brisk walk, a little bit of a jog sometimes, but that's probably more so if you are pretty fit. For most people, it's just going to be like a brisk walk. If you're doing, if you want to get some active recovery for your upper body, something like just throwing a football or a frisbee around could be good. Doing like a little bit of a swim, really it's just activity. You don't want to go overboard though. The risk that comes when you go overboard is that is going to impair our glycogen muscle resynthesis, because if we're being too active, we're going to kind of use up some of the glycogen that's being reformed in our muscles, and then it's actually kind of just eat away at the glycogen we're hoping to use for our next training session. I'd say when in doubt, you should probably go a little bit lower and lighter and easier on your active recovery than you think you need to. In fact, some people get this idea with active recovery that they need to be doing more active recovery, and just they think, well, I want to recover better from my exercise. What more can I do? What can I add? What can I do? And in a lot of cases, I love the energy behind that you are super excited to do as much as you can to be great at your sport. But in a lot of cases, you probably need to be doing less. Really, sleep and rest are what is really going to be the biggest drivers of muscle recovery, tissue recovery for sports.